The sound of crunching metal filled my ears as my car flipped. Glass shattered around me, rain hammering against twisted steel. Through the chaos, my phone was still connected on speaker. I heard my director's voice, smooth and satisfied. "Don't worry about the meeting, Karen. Mia won't be making it. I'll handle everything personally." That was my client. My $24.5 million deal. 6 months of negotiations, countless late nights, relationships I'd carefully built. And Alan Pierce, my director at Strathmore Co, was taking it from me while I hung upside down in my wrecked car, blood running down my face. I tried to speak, to scream, but my ribs felt broken. All I could do was listen as he continued, "Between you and me, Mia's been struggling lately. I think this project needs stronger leadership." The line went dead. Sirens wailed in the distance. My vision blurred. But even through the pain, one thought burned clear: Alan had just made the biggest mistake of his career. White ceiling tiles. Beeping monitors. The smell of antiseptic. I drifted in and out of consciousness for what felt like years but was only 3 days. When I finally opened my eyes fully, my mother sat beside the hospital bed, her face creased with worry. "Sweetheart, you're awake," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "The doctor said you have a concussion and 3 broken ribs. They want to keep you another week for observation." I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my chest. "My phone," I managed to croak. "Where's my phone?" She handed it to me carefully. The screen was cracked but working. 27 missed calls. 14 messages. But nothing from Alan. Nothing from my team. Instead, there was an email from our company's communications department with the subject line, "Congratulations to Alan Pierce." My heart sank even before I opened it. The message announced Alan's landmark achievement in closing the Westfield partnership, my partnership, worth $24.5 million. My name appeared nowhere in the entire announcement. Recovery was slow and bitter. Physical therapy twice a day. Pills for the pain. But the worst injury wasn't my ribs or my head, it was watching my career get stolen in real time. From my hospital bed, I scrolled through the company intranet. There was Alan's face, beaming in a photo beside our CEO, holding a ridiculous oversized check. The article praised his strategic vision and months of dedicated work. My dedicated work. My strategic vision. My months of building trust with Westfield Industries. I remembered every detail: the first cold call to their procurement office, the dinner where I'd finally convinced their CFO to take a chance on us, the weekend I'd spent redesigning our proposal because their team needed specific modifications. Alan had attended exactly 2 meetings, both times arriving late and leaving early. Yet somehow, the company newsletter called him a rising star and the future of our sales division. I laughed, a sharp sound that made my ribs scream. Then I started planning. 3 weeks after the crash, I returned to the office. The moment I walked through the glass doors, leaning on my cane, conversation stopped. People stared. Some looked away quickly. Others offered tight, uncomfortable smiles. "Mia, you're back," stammered Claire from accounting. "We were so worried. How are you feeling?" Before I could answer, Trevor from legal cut in. "We heard you had a really tough time. Must have been overwhelming." There was something in his tone, pity mixed with something else. Judgment, maybe. As I made my way to my desk, I overheard whispered fragments, "Couldn't handle the pressure. Alan really saved that deal. She's lucky she still has a job." My absence had been rewritten into weakness. My car accident had become evidence of my incompetence. By the time I reached my desk, I understood exactly what Alan had done. He hadn't just stolen my deal. He'd stolen my reputation, turning my tragedy into his triumph. Smart. Cruel. And about to backfire spectacularly. Alan greeted me like a king welcoming back a loyal servant. "Mia. Look at you, up and walking," he said loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear his generous tone. "We really missed you around here." Well, I mean, we managed, but still. He gestured toward the conference room where my project used to live. I know it must be hard coming back after everything, but don't worry, I documented all my processes. You can study them if you want to improve your approach. My approach. I smiled back, sweet and simple. That's so thoughtful, Alan. I'd love to see what you did. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He actually believed I was grateful that I'd accepted my place beneath him. Great. I'll send you the files. Consider it a learning opportunity. He patted my shoulder, a gesture that made my skin crawl, and walked away whistling. That was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't going to explode or file complaints or make emotional appeals. I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to let Alan destroy himself. My desk felt foreign. The photos I'd kept were moved. My files were gone. Even my nameplate had vanished, replaced with a generic Workstation 7B label. I logged into my computer and navigated to the shared project drive. The Westfield folder was still there, but when I clicked it, access denied. That's weird, I said aloud, making sure the IT specialist passing by would hear. He stopped, looking embarrassed. Oh, yeah. Alan requested ownership transfer while you were recovering. Said it would be more efficient to have everything under one person. More efficient. My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice light. Makes sense. Do I at least have view access? The IT guy shook his head. Sorry, Mia. Complete transfer. But hey, Alan's the project lead now, so if you need something, just ask him. I thanked him and turned back to my screen. Alan had been thorough, erasing my digital footprint like I'd never existed. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd assumed I kept everything on the company drive. I hadn't. 2 days after returning to work, an email popped into my personal inbox. The sender, Karen Westfield, Chief Operating Officer of Westfield Industries. My heart jumped. Mia. So glad to hear you're recovering from your accident. When you're feeling up to it, we should discuss Phase 2 of the partnership. Your insights were invaluable in Phase 1, and we want your input moving forward. I read it 3 times, each word sinking in like sunlight through storm clouds. Karen thought I was still the point of contact. Alan had closed my deal, accepted all the credit, and paraded around the office like a hero, but he hadn't told the client he'd replaced me. Why would he? He probably assumed they wouldn't notice or care. He was wrong on both counts. I drafted a careful response. Karen, thank you so much. I'm excited to discuss Phase 2. Would next week work for a call? Her reply came within an hour. Perfect. I'll include our CEO, Thomas, since this expansion will be significant. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Alan's glass tower was about to shatter. Over the next several days, I played the perfect returning employee. In meetings, Alan boasted about his strategies and his negotiation tactics. He even started referring to me as his junior consultant, despite the fact that I'd been with the company 2 years longer than him. Mia's still getting back up to speed, he told our department head during a team briefing. But she's learning quickly. I'm mentoring her through the basics. I smiled through every condescending word, nodding when appropriate, taking notes in my leather portfolio. But I wasn't recording his wisdom, I was documenting his lies. Every false claim. Every exaggeration. Every moment he rewrote history with himself as the hero. Because when you're planning real revenge, silence is sharper than any confrontation. Let them think you're weak. Let them think you've accepted defeat. Then, when they're most comfortable, most confident, most certain of their victory, that's when you strike. And I was getting very close to striking. My apartment became war room headquarters. I spread documents across my dining table, printed emails with timestamps, recorded phone calls from my personal device, draft proposals with my revision history, even photos from client dinners where I'd been the only Strathmore representative present. Everything was organized into a single folder on my laptop labeled Phoenix Project. Because that's exactly what I planned to become, rising from the ashes of what Alan tried to destroy. The evidence was overwhelming. Every major breakthrough in the Westfield negotiation traced back to me. The technical specifications they'd requested? I'd spent 3 weekends researching solutions. The pricing model that finally won them over? I'd built it from scratch using data Alan didn't even know existed. The relationship with Karen that made everything possible? I'd cultivated it over 5 months of weekly check-ins, always professional, always helpful, always reliable. Alan had attended 2 meetings, smiled in a few photos, and signed the final documents. That was his entire contribution. But he'd convinced everyone, except the client, that he was the mastermind. That mistake would cost him everything. I scheduled lunch with Karen Westfield at a quiet restaurant downtown. She arrived exactly on time, professional but warm. "Mia, it's wonderful to see you looking so well. We were devastated to hear about your accident." We ordered, made small talk about recovery and weather, and then Karen's expression shifted slightly. "Can I ask you something? Alan mentioned you'd been struggling with the project before your accident. But that doesn't match anything we experienced. You were always incredibly prepared and responsive." I set down my fork carefully. "That's interesting. What specifically did Alan say?" Karen hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "He implied you'd been overwhelmed, that he'd been handling most of the heavy lifting for months. But honestly, Mia, we barely heard from him until after your accident. Every proposal, every modification, every midnight email answering our questions, that was all you." I let silence settle between us for a moment. Then I said quietly, "Karen, I need to tell you something. But first, I need to know, does your company record business calls?" Her eyes widened with understanding. "We do. Every single one." That afternoon, Karen sent an email that changed everything. The recipients, Alan Pierce and me. The subject, Joint Review Meeting, Westfield Partnership. "Alan and Mia, I'd like to schedule a comprehensive review call next week with our executive team and yours. We want to discuss Phase 2 expansion and recognize the outstanding work that made Phase 1 such a success. Would Tuesday at 2 p.m. work?" I responded immediately, "I'll be there. Looking forward to it." Alan's reply came 3 minutes later, dripping with false camaraderie. "Excellent idea. Happy to showcase our teamwork and strategic approach. This will be a great learning opportunity for everyone." Our teamwork. I almost laughed. He genuinely believed this was a celebration call, a chance for more glory, another opportunity to accept praise for work he didn't do. He had no idea what Karen and I had discussed over lunch. No idea that Westfield Industries recorded all their business calls, including the ones where I'd negotiated every detail while Alan was nowhere to be found. No idea that his carefully constructed lies were about to collapse in front of every executive who mattered. The trap was set. He'd walked right into it. Now I just needed to wait for Tuesday. The Whisper network was already turning against Alan, though he was too self-absorbed to notice. At the coffee station, I overheard Brenda from marketing. "Did you see Alan's latest email? He actually took credit for the color scheme in the presentation." The color scheme. As if he's ever opened PowerPoint in his life. By the water cooler, 2 analysts were less subtle. I had to redo a report 3 times because Alan kept forgetting what he'd asked for. Then he told our boss it was my fault for lack of clarity. The guy's a nightmare. Even Claire from accounting, usually diplomatic to a fault, rolled her eyes when Alan's name came up. He submitted an expense report for a client dinner on a night when I know he was at his kid's soccer game. The receipts don't even match the date. The cracks in Alan's reputation were spreading, but he was too busy enjoying his stolen success to notice. He strutted through the office like royalty, winking at assistants, making grand gestures in meetings, talking loudly about his next big deal. Pride before the fall, my grandmother used to say. Alan's fall was going to be spectacular. Tuesday morning arrived with clear skies and sharp sunlight. I dressed carefully, navy blue suit, simple jewelry, hair pulled back professionally. No cane today, I'd been practicing walking without it, determined to project strength rather than victimhood. Alan, meanwhile, wore his most expensive suit and arrived early to set up the conference room. He tested the camera angles, adjusted the lighting, even brought in a plant to improve the background aesthetics. This wasn't just a meeting to him, it was a performance, another chance to shine. "Nervous?" he asked when I entered the room 15 minutes before the call. His tone was falsely paternal, like a teacher checking on a struggling student before an exam. "You don't need to say much. Just follow my lead, and we'll make a great impression." I smiled, settling into my chair with deliberate calm. "I'll do my best to contribute meaningfully." He patted my shoulder again, that condescending gesture that made my teeth grind. "That's the spirit. This is your chance to learn from a real closer." I didn't respond. I simply opened my laptop and waited. 5 minutes until showtime. The video call connected at exactly 2 p.m. Faces filled the screen: Karen Westfield, her CEO Thomas, 3 members of their executive team, plus our own CEO Victoria Hayes, our CFO, and our head of sales. 10 people total, all cameras on, all expressions professional and expectant. Alan launched immediately into performance mode. "Thank you all for joining us today. This partnership represents months of strategic thinking, careful negotiation, and relentless dedication. I'm proud to say that Strathmore Company's success with Westfield Industries demonstrates what happens when you combine vision with execution." He gestured broadly, his voice rich with confidence. From the initial outreach to the final contract, every decision was guided by a comprehensive strategy that I developed specifically for this opportunity. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded on the table, my expression neutral. My heartbeat was steady. This was it, the moment everything changed. Alan continued, "The key was understanding Westfield's unique needs and positioning our solutions as irreplaceable assets. That level of insight requires experience, intuition, and frankly, a talent for reading people." I watched Karen's face. She was leaning forward slightly, her expression shifting from polite attention to something sharper. Confusion. Then recognition. Thomas Westfield, the CEO, raised his hand slightly. Alan paused mid-sentence, clearly thrown off by the interruption. "I'm sorry," Thomas said, his voice calm but firm. "Did you just say you developed the strategy from initial outreach through final contract?" Alan nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Every phase of this partnership reflects my personal approach to complex negotiations." Thomas exchanged a long look with Karen. Then he turned back to the camera. "That's interesting, Alan, because my team has documentation showing that every proposal, every revision, every substantive communication came directly from Mia Dalton. Your name appears on exactly 2 email threads, both times as a CC recipient." The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Alan's mouth opened. Then closed. His face, so confident moments before, began to drain of color. Karen leaned forward. "Alan, we've been reviewing our records in preparation for this expansion. Mia was our primary contact for 6 months. She negotiated terms, addressed our technical concerns, and even worked weekends to meet our deadlines. Where exactly were you during all of that?" I still hadn't spoken. I didn't need to. The truth was speaking for itself. Alan stammered, his polished composure cracking like thin ice. "Well, of course Mia assisted with certain aspects. She's a capable team member. But the overall strategy, the big picture thinking, that came from my leadership." His voice sounded desperate now, nothing like the confident executive who'd started the call. Victoria Hayes, our CEO, jumped in. "Alan, can you walk us through a specific strategic decision you made? Something concrete that shaped the negotiation." Alan's eyes darted toward me, then back to the screen. The pricing model. That was crucial. I developed that framework to maximize value while addressing their budget concerns." Karen's expression hardened. Mia sent us 14 versions of that pricing model, each one refined based on feedback from our finance team. Your name never appeared in any related communication. Thomas added quietly, and just for absolute clarity, we record all our business calls. Including the one where Mia walked us through every calculation in that model, explaining the rationale behind each variable. That call was 90 minutes long. Alan, you weren't on it. The camera caught Alan's face perfectly, shock, panic, and the dawning realization that his lies were unraveling in real time. Victoria's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Alan, are you telling me you took credit for work you didn't do? The conference room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with disaster. Alan tried to recover. I think there's been a misunderstanding about roles and responsibilities. I was the senior oversight on this project, which means you signed documents and attended celebratory meetings, Karen interrupted. Her professional courtesy had evaporated, replaced by cold precision. Mia did the actual work. We have timestamps, email threads, recorded calls, and documented proof of every interaction. Your contribution was functionally zero. Our CFO spoke up, his voice grave. Alan, the company issued a press release crediting you with this deal. We based a significant portion of your recent promotion on this achievement. If what Westfield Industries is saying is accurate, we have a serious problem. I finally spoke, my voice calm and clear. I have documentation as well. 6 months of proposals, negotiations, and client relationship building. All time-stamped. All traceable. I'd be happy to share it with HR and the board. Alan's face went from pale to ash gray. He looked at me with something between betrayal and recognition. He'd underestimated me completely. The call ended with promises of internal review and further discussion. But everyone in that room knew the truth. The moment the screen went dark, Victoria turned to Alan with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, professional fury. My office. Now. Alan stood slowly, his earlier confidence completely gone. As he passed my chair, he whispered, "You set me up." I looked at him steadily. No, Alan. You set yourself up. I just let the truth speak. He left the room like a man walking to his execution. Within an hour, HR arrived at my desk with a formal request for my documentation. I handed over my Phoenix folder, printed, organized, indexed, and irrefutable. Every email. Every draft. Every recorded call. The evidence didn't just prove my work, it proved Alan's systematic deception. By 5 p.m., rumors were spreading through the office. By 6 p.m., Alan's access badge stopped working at the building entrance. By 7 p.m., I received an email from Victoria, "Please attend a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to discuss your role in the Westfield partnership moving forward." I closed my laptop and looked around the empty office. For the first time since the crash, I felt something close to peace. The board meeting the next morning was unlike anything I'd experienced. Victoria sat at the head of the table, flanked by our CFO and head of legal. "Mia, we owe you an apology," she began without preamble. "The investigation into the Westfield project has revealed serious misconduct on Alan Pierce's part. He deliberately misrepresented his involvement, took credit for your work, and damaged both your professional reputation and our relationship with a key client." I listened quietly as she continued. "Alan's employment has been terminated effective immediately. We're also issuing a corrected press release acknowledging your leadership on the Westfield partnership. Additionally, we're conducting a full review of all projects Alan claimed credit for during his tenure here." The CFO added, "Westfield Industries has requested that you specifically lead Phase 2 of the partnership. They've made it clear that their continued business depends on your involvement." Victoria leaned forward. "Mia, you turned a betrayal into an opportunity to demonstrate integrity. That's the kind of leadership we need here. How would you feel about becoming Director of Strategic Partnerships, effective immediately?" I took a breath. Director. The position Alan had stolen my work to achieve, I was now earning legitimately. I'd be honored. The public statement went out that afternoon. Strathmore Company is pleased to recognize Mia Dalton for her exceptional leadership in securing our partnership with Westfield Industries. Ms. Dalton's strategic vision and dedicated client relationship management were instrumental in this landmark achievement. She has been promoted to Director of Strategic Partnerships. My inbox exploded. Congratulations from colleagues, apologies from people who'd believed Alan's lies, even a message from my old college mentor, I knew you had it in you. Proud doesn't begin to cover it. But the most meaningful message came from Karen Westfield, justice served. Looking forward to phase 2 with someone we actually trust. I didn't celebrate publicly. No champagne. No victory laps. I simply sat in my car in the parking garage, watching the sun set through the concrete pillars, thinking about that rainy night when my car flipped and Alan's voice came through the speaker. I'd survived the crash. I'd survived the betrayal. And I'd done it without becoming like him. That felt like the real victory. Not the promotion or the recognition, but the knowledge that I'd fought back with truth instead of manipulation, with patience instead of rage. Alan's fall was swift and complete. Word spread through the industry with the speed that only scandal can achieve. Within a week, every major firm in the region knew what he'd done. The professional network he'd spent years building evaporated overnight. His LinkedIn profile, once full of congratulatory messages, was now conspicuously quiet. I heard through mutual contacts that he'd tried to spin the story, claiming it was a misunderstanding about project roles and office politics gone wrong. But Westfield Industries had issued their own statement, matter-of-factly clarifying who had done the actual work. That statement carried weight. No one wanted to hire someone who'd been publicly called out by a client for taking credit for work he didn't do. Trust, once broken that completely, doesn't repair easily in our industry. 2 months after the video call, someone told me Alan had moved to another state, taking a position at a much smaller firm for significantly less money. I didn't feel triumphant hearing that news. I felt something quieter, a sense of natural consequences playing out exactly as they should. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with them. Phase 2 of the Westfield partnership launched 6 weeks after my promotion. The expansion was even larger than Phase 1, $40 million over 3 years. This time, my name was on every document from the beginning. This time, there was no confusion about who led the negotiations. The kickoff meeting felt surreal. I stood in the same conference room where Alan had tried to claim my work, but now I was the one presenting strategy to our executives. I was the one fielding questions. I was the one building trust with the client. Karen Westfield attended in person, something she rarely did. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "You know what impressed me most about all this?" she asked. "It wasn't just that you did great work. It was that you let the truth defend itself. You didn't try to destroy Alan publicly or turn this into a spectacle. You just presented facts and let them speak." I considered her words. "I think revenge only works if you don't lose yourself in the process," I said. "I wanted justice, not destruction." Karen smiled. "That's exactly why we trust you. That's exactly why this partnership will work." 3 months after the disaster call, I received an envelope at work. Handwritten address. No return information. Inside was a single page. "Mia, I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you honesty. You were always better at this than me, better at the work, better at relationships, better at integrity. I got caught up in trying to appear successful instead of actually being successful. What I did was inexcusable. I'm sorry." It was signed simply, Alan. I read it twice, then filed it in my desk drawer. Forgiveness wasn't something I needed to decide right now. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But the apology mattered less than the acknowledgement. He'd finally admitted the truth, even if only to me. That closure, small as it was, felt important. Not because it changed anything, but because it proved that even people who hurt us can sometimes recognize their own mistakes. I didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing left to say. Our story had ended the moment the truth came out on that call. Everything after was just epilogue, him facing consequences, me moving forward, both of us learning different lessons from the same betrayal. Sometimes late at night, I still thought about that moment in the crashed car, hanging upside down, hearing Alan's voice through the speaker, realizing my work was being stolen while I fought for consciousness. It had felt like the end of everything, my career, my reputation, my trust in people I'd considered colleagues. But it had actually been a beginning. The betrayal had forced me to become more strategic, more careful, more aware of protecting my work and my worth. I'd learned that silence could be more powerful than shouting, that patience could be more effective than immediate confrontation, and that truth, given enough time and the right platform, would always surface. The crash had broken my ribs and given me a concussion. Alan's betrayal had tried to break my spirit. But I'd survived both. And in surviving, I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, not the strength to destroy someone who hurt me, but the strength to let consequences unfold naturally while I rebuilt everything he'd tried to take. That was real power, not revenge, but resilience. Not payback, but perseverance. Not destruction, but dignity. 6 months after the call that changed everything, I stood on a conference stage at an industry summit. Behind me, a screen displayed, Mia Dalton, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Strathmore Co. The presentation was about building client relationships in complex negotiations. As I spoke, I looked out at hundreds of faces, colleagues, competitors, potential clients, all listening to my strategies, my insights, my experience. This was the visibility I'd worked toward for years. Not stolen, not handed to me, not achieved through deception. Earned. After the presentation, during the networking session, 3 different companies approached me about potential partnerships. Karen Westfield introduced me to colleagues from other firms, each time saying, "This is the person you want leading your most important negotiations." As I walked out of the conference center that evening, briefcase in hand, I passed a reflective window and caught my own image. I looked different than I had 6 months ago, not just recovered from injuries, but fundamentally changed. Stronger. Clearer. More certain of my own worth. The crash hadn't destroyed me. Alan's betrayal hadn't broken me. Instead, they'd forged me into someone who understood that real success isn't about taking credit, it's about doing work so excellent that the truth becomes impossible to hide. I smiled at my reflection and kept walking. There were bigger deals ahead, new challenges waiting, and this time, no one would ever question whose work it was. My name. My effort. My victory. And no one could ever erase that again.